Okay, so here we are, it's Wednesday the 9th of September, and we wake up to the news that yet another significant change in rules relating to the coronavirus pandemic is about to be implemented next Monday, which is gatherings of people are going to be restricted to 6 rather than 30. There's some caveats to it. There's some exceptions, but I can't keep up to date with all these rules. But the headline and the main point to take away is restrictions on people limited to 6. So as I expected, there was going to be a further tightening of restrictions, and here it is. And I hear people saying that the chopping and changing of rules, it makes no sense, they don't know what they're doing, they're out of control, it's chaos. Possibly that is the explanation behind it. I take a different tact. I think it's classic psychological warfare tactics, this, where rules are changed with very, very short notice and very, very frequently, with the intent of creating confusion and spreading fear. So I think there's something deeply sinister behind everything to do with COVID, and that certainly includes the constant chopping and changing of rules. I mean, we're seeing that with quarantine, aren't we? Quarantine rules for people coming back off holiday. It makes no sense whatsoever, which is why, again, as I've thought for some time, the fact it makes no sense, any of it makes no sense, there's no logic to it, there's no explanation for it, there's no justification for it. It has to be something very, very sinister and evil behind all this. Yes, the infection rate's creeping up. There is mass testing going on. For anyone who doesn't know, by the way, the UK is conducting the second most tests in the entire world behind the US, and the most per head of population if you include 2 small countries, Singapore and Bahrain. Regardless, the UK, after a slow start, is now world leading in its testing capacity, which I disagree with, by the way. But for anyone who's still saying we're not doing enough tests, I mean, come on, what are we testing for? Top and bottom of it is we're doing loads and loads and loads and loads of tests. But deaths are flatlined, the death rate isn't going up. There's no evidence at all that the virus was as virulent as it was back in February, March and April. There's increasing evidence that the drugs that are being used, the antiviral drugs being used in hospitals, are making a difference. None of this makes any sense. I mean, people who are still following the rules dutifully, believe in the mainstream media. How much more evidence do you need now that this is not as cut and dry as we've been told? I mean, come on, words fail me. The death rate overall in the UK is around 0.07%. 0.07% of the population. 0.07%, yet we had a massacre in care homes. We still can't have more than 30 people at funerals or weddings. I'm hearing stories of crematoriums insisting that families stay 2 meters apart at the funerals of their loved ones. Cancer screenings haven't been taking place. Kids have only just gone back to school, many of whom are wearing masks. We still can't go to football matches, we can't go to the theatre. You can't stand at the bar in the pub. Our freedoms haven't been returned. And anyone who says that they have is wrong, because they haven't. We are less free now than we were 6 months ago. All of these horrendous consequences of this terrible, ill thought through, well actually it wasn't ill thought through, I just contradicted myself, of this planned lockdown are starting to play out. The mental health epidemic, the suicides, the children who've been let down, the old people who've been let down. God, are we a caring society? No, we're not. We like to think we are, but I'm sorry, we're not. It's impossible to justify. If people can't see this for what it is now, I mean, I'm sorry, there's no hope for us. There's no hope. Or maybe they can. Maybe they can. I don't know. Well, I think a lot of people can. They can see through this, in which case The responsibility now falls on anybody who can see through this lie, to be the light now and to start exposing it. This proves to me, what I've seen proves to me that there are a large minority, a small majority, a medium-sized majority maybe, of people who are willing to be slaves, willing to be enslaved by the state. Whether they're getting paid to still on furlough, and not having to getting paid by the taxpayer, funded by the taxes of people who have set up private enterprises, private businesses, and lost their jobs, funded by those people, to stay at home, or whether there's just a lot of people who are more comfortable with being enslaved, because freedom is actually one of man's biggest fears, alongside death. Freedom, because if you do have ultimate 100% liberty, that's hard, that's challenging, because it means taking ownership and responsibility for your life. I think a lot of people are comfortable with having decisions contracted out on their behalf to the state. Two other examples I want to give here. I'm from Liverpool, which allegedly is a city, a rebellious city, full of people who are free-spirited and who like to take on authority, and who apparently despise the Tories, and have done ever since Thatcher in the 80s. I mean, we never hear the last of it. But no, they're not, because I'm seeing incredibly high levels of compliance with what Boris Johnson is saying in this city, in Liverpool, in this alleged socialist city. If they were so rebellious, they wouldn't be complying. And then another example as well. So many people who, when Boris Johnson was elected with a massive landslide, a majority of 80 in September, threw a hissy fit, as leftists always do, because, we live in an era where leftists cannot accept democratic events. Boris Johnson, Tories winning, Brexit, Trump in America burning the American flag. I mean, it's all pathetic. Hissy fit, not my prime minister, all that kind of stuff. Well, so many of those same people now are dutifully following out every single decision without question, unquestioningly obedient, obeying dear leader Boris. It's so bizarre. It's like everything's been subverted, turned upside down. I also do see an emerging trend of, on one side, and I'm going to call the people who respect democracy and freedom, and I include myself in that. I happily talk about all my flaws, and I do. I'm far from perfect, so deeply flawed, I really, really am. But I do have a healthy respect for freedom of speech, for freedom and for democracy as well. And I do see, the trend I see is 3 era-defining events in the last few years: Brexit, Trump, and now lockdown. And I think you see on one side, generally, I'm seeing people who voted for Trump, people who voted for Brexit, and people who are against lockdown. And on the other side, Remainers who still can't get over the Brexit referendum, Democrats who still can't get over the fact that Trump was elected and will be re-elected, in my opinion, and lockdown activists who not only are, they're not happy because it's not as stringent and not as not as tough as it could be, the lockdown. There's a clear trend emerging of people who value freedom and of those who are willing to be slaves, in my opinion. But what's the way out of this for the ones of us who can see through the lie? I get that there's people who still might not quite be ready to speak out, but seriously, listen to me. You're gonna have to get over it and do it very, very soon, because the way out of this is not the government suddenly saying, okay, we're going to trust the people now. It's not the government saying, okay, you can have all your freedoms back now. That doesn't happen. Freedoms don't come back that way. Once they're taken away, they aren't given back, and they're certainly not given back in full. The way out of it is for populations, for the public, for the people themselves to take the lead, which requires every single person who can see through this taking a lead, and all those little differences, being a leader, speaking personal truth, all those little differences will soon add up. The power is with the people here. It is not with politicians. It is not with scientists. You need to understand that. Bad things in history could never have happened without compliance. That is the only reason why bad things happen, why tyranny ensues, why dictators hold sway. Because they have people carrying out their bidding, as we're seeing in Australia with the police. You know, I also hear people saying that they have to, you know, protect their jobs and protect their income and think of their kids. Okay, fair enough. What about a scenario where we're living under a tyrannical regime where your kids don't have any freedoms at all and where you and your kids are scared every single day for that knock at the door? Then what? That excuse doesn't wash with me. We all, whether we have kids or not, whether we have jobs or not, we all have responsibilities. We all have something to lose. But just think back to recent history 3 generations ago. You know, what our grandparents, what they had to lose. What did they have to lose? Their very lives. Many of them did lose their lives. We're the luckiest generation, and this is our challenge. So let's rise to it. Come on. You know, I have lost faith in humanity in so many ways. I have. And in so many ways, I look at this situation and think people don't deserve their freedom. They've abused it so much. And they're so stupid. So many people are so stupid, so naive. But then I think you can't lose your faith in humanity. It's tempting. It's tempting. So we've got to speak up. People have got to speak up before it's too late. Do it before it's too late. See you soon.